Coming up on Arirang News, the coronavirus is now spreading in South Korea faster than ever before. More than 50 cases reported just today, most of them connected to a church in the city of Daegu, which is postponing public events to stop it from spreading. President Moon Jae-in calls for swift action to trace all those who've been to the places in and around Daegu where there's a high number of cases. The South Korean and U.S. militaries are both limiting the movement of their personnel. And the Finance Ministry will soon announce measures to help small businesses hit by the outbreak, possibly with special coupons for low-income people to spend at local markets. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The number of coronavirus cases here in South Korea is skyrocketing. It reported 52 new cases today alone. For more, we have our Choi Jung-yoon on the line for us. So, Jung-yoon, where are these new cases?
Devin, 41 out of the 52 newly confirmed cases in South Korea are in the southeastern city of Daegu and the surrounding Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Among these new cases, 39 are tied to the Shincheonji Church of Jesus, which was visited by the country's 31st confirmed patient. But the number of cases is likely to surge as some 500 of those churchgoers are saying they have symptoms of the coronavirus. As community-based transmission is occurring in Daegu, the metropolitan city government is postponing all events where many people are likely to gather until March. On top of that, all daycare centers in Daegu are recommended to close until further notice. Other regions have also reported new cases, 3 in Seoul, 2 in Gyeongsang-namdo province, and 1 each in Chungcheongnam-do, Chungcheongbuk-do, Gyeonggi-do, Jeollabuk-do provinces, Gwangju and Jeju.
Well, this is causing a lot of concern indeed, especially in Daegu. Now, South Korea also reported its first coronavirus fatality yesterday. Tell us more about that.
He was a 63-year-old man who had been hospitalized with schizophrenia in Cheongdo Daenam Hospital for more than 2 decades. He died after showing symptoms of pneumonia early Wednesday, but upon conducting an autopsy, doctors discovered he had COVID-19. Experts say the mortality rate of the virus outside Wuhan is estimated to be around 0.2 to 0.4%. That's lower than MERS, but higher than influenza. Further deaths from COVID-19 are likely to occur over time in South Korea, especially if new cases continue to mount at the current rate. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Choi Jung-yoon, thank you for that. Now, President Moon Jae-in has called for swifter and stronger responses to the outbreak. He received an emergency briefing Friday morning from Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun. South Korea confirmed its first death from the virus a day earlier. While the number of confirmed cases has surpassed 150, the majority of those reported at a church in Daegu and at a hospital in Cheongdo in the country's southeast. Now, President Moon ordered thorough action to trace those who've recently been to either place. South Korea has decided to designate Daegu and Cheongdo as special care zones. The government's vowed full support, including relief items, and has stepped up quarantine measures to prevent the further spread in local communities. The Prime Minister said they've secured a list of worshippers at the church and will conduct checkups after placing them under self-quarantine. The government has left its national alert level at watch, but said it will take the stronger response measures anyway. The South Korean military and U.S. forces in the country are on high alert following this series of confirmed coronavirus cases among South Korean troops. They're taking measures such as canceling leave and advising personnel to limit travel to infected areas. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Following a meeting held late Thursday by Seoul's Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do, the Defense Ministry said starting this Saturday, it will temporarily ban soldiers' leave and travel as well as visitors. There are a few exceptions for family-related events and soldiers who are awaiting discharge and do not have to return to their bases. The ministry said one person in the Navy based in Jeju Island has been confirmed of contracting the virus after spending 6 days in Daegu and Gyeongsang-buk-do province, where there have been over 100 cases of the virus. South Korea's Air Force has quarantined some 80 soldiers as a preventative measure after an Air Force officer based in Daegu who had been dispatched to the Kaedongdae military compound earlier this week was confirmed of contracting the coronavirus. An Army officer in Chungpyeong County, Chungcheongbuk-do province has also been confirmed to have the coronavirus. As a whole, the ministry has quarantined some 340 soldiers, either at their homes or at separate locations in their bases as of Thursday afternoon. The U.S. Forces Korea has also limited all service members' non-essential travel to and around Daegu, while highly encouraging family members of service personnel, civilians, and contractors to limit travel to the southeastern city. Several facilities for children at the USFK garrison in Daegu remain closed. The USFK has elevated the risk level to moderate while noting that no confirmed cases have been reported among its personnel. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization says that while the number seems quite high in South Korea, the cases are mostly linked to already existing outbreaks in the country, seeming to imply that they're containable. Lee Seung-jae reports.
53 newly confirmed COVID-19 cases were reported in South Korea on Thursday, nearly doubling the total number of confirmed patients to 104. South Korea also reported its first death, with a 63-year-old man dying of pneumonia on Wednesday. However, the WHO says despite the surge in the number of confirmed cases, they're mostly linked to known existing outbreaks.
The number of cases in South Korea reported today are actually from several distinct clusters, which the Korean authorities are following very closely. So although the number seems quite high, they are mostly linked to known existing outbreaks.
Morgan added that the latest outbreak doesn't signal a particular change in the global epidemiology, but does signal that the South Korean authorities are working closely to contain all the new cases that have been identified so far. The WHO's Director General says South Korea should be able to contain the outbreak with the kind of measures it has been taking.
With measures they can take, which is proportional to the public health risk they have, I think the number of cases are really manageable. And I hope South Korea will do everything to contain this outbreak at this early stage.
The WHO chief also noted that the number of COVID-19 cases in the rest of the world is very low compared to mainland China, but warned it may not stay the same for very long. Meanwhile, the WHO announced Thursday that a team from Seoul National University's medical school will be joining the WHO's international team of health experts in China in a bid to contain the outbreak. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
China on Thursday reported 889 new confirmed cases, 631 of which were in Hubei province. That's according to China's National Health Commission. It says there were also 118 more deaths, 115 of which were in Hubei. More than 2,000 patients in Hubei are reportedly in critical condition. This brings the total number of confirmed infections in China to more than 75,400 and the death toll to more than 2,200. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued travel advisories for Americans visiting Japan and Hong Kong. According to officials, on Thursday, it's a level 1 travel watch, the lowest level, noting that there are, quote, multiple instances of community spread in both places. However, it's not necessary, they said, to postpone or cancel trips there. The advisories warn travelers to avoid contact with sick people and to avoid touching their own eyes, nose, or mouth with unwashed hands. They also recommend frequent hand washing for at least 20 seconds at a time. Meanwhile, for China, the U.S. State Department has raised its travel advisory from level 3 to level 4, which means it's asking Americans not to go to China. People can spread the coronavirus before they're even aware that they're infected, so experts say public awareness is crucial to containing it. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Worries are increasing as COVID-19 quickly spreads through community transmission. Doctors are concerned about the virus spreading before patients are diagnosed. According to the Korean National Clinical Management Network for Emerging Infectious Disease, COVID-19 is shown to be more infectious in its early stages during first 3 to 5 days of infection when people have only mild symptoms or no symptoms at all.
Because the virus comes out from the upper airway at the early stage of symptoms, it spreads easily to others through coughing and saliva.
Thus, to prevent the virus from spreading further, the public needs to be aware of what to do. Those with symptoms should call the KCDC call center by dialing 1339 for further instructions before they visit hospital. People who think they may have been infected should visit the government-designated medical centers instead of going to general hospitals or clinics. Currently, the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention uses a method called real-time RT-PCR to find out whether a person has been infected with the virus. The investigator wears anti-contamination clothing and takes a sample of secretion from the suspected patient, then extracts and amplifies the virus gene. This is only possible in designated medical centers and public health centers right now. If people with fever and respiratory symptoms visit general hospitals instead and are later diagnosed with coronavirus, then these hospitals need to temporarily close down.
It's especially important to prevent the virus from spreading to large medical centers which have lots of patients with serious conditions.
Citizens can find information on nearby clinics that perform coronavirus checks by calling 1339 or visiting the South Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare website at www.mohw.go.kr. 김보경, Arirang News.
The South Korean government will announce an economic relief package next week to help small businesses struggling because of the coronavirus. Kim Da-mi has this report.
South Korea is reviewing all ways and options to support small businesses that are grappling with the coronavirus outbreak. Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said on Friday that measures to be announced next week will include ways to help small business owners who are behind on their rent. The government is still looking for the most appropriate way to lift the rent burden. The new measures may also see the return of the so-called spending coupons. Introduced in 2009, the coupons were provided to people in lower income brackets. For 6 months, around 860,000 people spent the coupons at local supermarkets and traditional markets. The Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Sang-jo said on Friday that the government is also reviewing all options, including allocating a supplementary budget to tackle the outbreak. Kim also noted that the government has sufficient emergency funds to fight the virus, especially compared to when SARS broke out in 2003. In addition to the relief package for local businesses, the government will unveil a package of measures by the end of February to bail out industries and people across South Korea. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
China has slashed its benchmark lending rate to try and prop up its economy amid the outbreak. The People's Bank of China lowered its one-year loan prime rate, or LPR, to 4.05% and its 5-year LPR by 5 basis points to 4.75%. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong government plans to inject around $4 billion to boost its quarantine measures and to ease the burden on local businesses. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Friday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for coming on today.
Good afternoon.
So all three main indexes on Wall Street were down overnight because of the latest developments with the coronavirus outbreak. What exactly was the story there on Thursday?
Sure. Wall Street closed in the red on Thursday as fears of the coronavirus slowing the global economy weighted the sentiment. On Wednesday, China's National Health Commission reported that 74,576 cases of the virus and 2,118 deaths on the mainland have been confirmed, while the South Korea reported a spike in the virus cases. Meanwhile, the International Air Transport Association estimated that the coronavirus outbreak will cost Chinese airlines about $12.8 billion in revenues and nearly $29 billion for the carriers in the South Asia Pacific region. all this news has resulted into the U.S. market showing some correction after continuing to break the record highs. Dow was down about 0.44%. S&P 500 was down 0.38%. NASDAQ was down 0.67%. However, though, the small cap did quite well because of expected boosting measures, and it showed a rise of 0.13%.
All right, well, Korean stocks are down sharply today with so many more cases of the virus being reported. How's this playing out on the Kospi and the Kosdaq?
Yes, clearly Korea is panicking about the incident of the coronavirus outbreak. South Korea's Kospi declined by more than 1.5%, around 1.5%, and the Kosdaq is down 2%, and that is after a quite significant down yesterday. So it's been quite significant decline of the Korean equity market. The reason for that is because the Yonhap News Agency, quoting the health authority, reported that there are 52 new confirmed cases of the coronavirus, bringing the total numbers to 156 in the country. Meanwhile, the Reuters reported that the chip maker of SK Hynix said that on Thursday that 800 of its workers had quarantined themselves after one trainee had close contact with a virus patient in the southeastern city of Daegu, the epicenter of the outbreak that's happening in South Korea at this point in time. Overall, people are quite concerned about the spread and the rise of the patient. And if this kind of speed actually happens, the dampening of the economic growth rate is going to be quite significant. We already see that more than 50% decline of the a lot of the activities, domestic consumer activities in regards to restaurants and the events and whatnot, and that is all affecting quite negatively. So everybody's quite concerned about that, and because of that, the correction seems to be quite severe. However, though, we are expecting some boosting measures to come out because of the fatality rate of this virus is not that high. The initial impact might be quite concerned at this point in time, but as the time passed by, we think that people will be looking at the level of the boosting measures, and therefore Korean equity market should show some recovering trend going into sometime next week.
Well, there's the impact of the outbreak here, but also the supplies in China, I suppose, are a concern.
Yes.
But we also have the spread of the coronavirus sending the Korean currency to over 1,200 won to the dollar now. What's your outlook in that regard?
Yes, as you said, the Korean won have depreciated all the way down to now 1206.8 today. Yesterday, it hit the 1206, and then it kind of appreciated to 1200 level, and then back up again today. Because of all this is due to the concern about the domestic consumption. We already know that Korea has one of the highest level of the consumer debt as GDP, which is well above 100%, and the loan-to-deposit ratio is extremely high for Korea. And with this kind of news, a lot of the mom and pop shops and the restaurants and all the relative small businesses of Korea will suffer quite significantly as the sales goes down by more than 50% in this month. So clearly that is putting a dent. And obviously because of that, we are expecting an additional rate cut might be coming soon. And due to that, the Korean won is depreciating relative to U.S. dollars. Now, previously, it did hit as high as 1230 several months ago and has appreciated all the way down to 1156, but now it is breaking above that, close to that number. We think that the trend overall is not going to be any movement of appreciation in the future. It will gradually continue to depreciate because coronavirus has impacted that Korean economic growth rate will slow down to maybe as low as 1.6% versus global economic growth rate of well above 2%. So clearly that is resulting into the currency depreciation, and that trend is not going to change that quickly.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks again for coming on, and have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Now, in other news, on the back of the success of the film Parasite at the Oscars, South Korea is looking to promote its movie industry even further. The Korean Culture and Information Service plans to hold special events in 25 countries in the first half of the year. The Korean Culture Centers in the U.S. will host Korean Film Nights in New York, Washington, and L.A. In Brazil, there will be special screenings of director Bong Joon-ho's past films. Cultural activities related to Korea will also take place in Hong Kong and the Philippines. Around the world, some 4 million musicians, lyricists, film directors, and other creators are represented by the International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers. This group and its affiliates in 121 countries works to make sure the rights of creators in terms of intellectual property are protected. Our Kan Hyung-woo sat down with the group's Director General, Gardi Oran, to discuss copyright protection and the global success of K-pop and the movie Parasite.
Hello, Mr. Oren. Thanks for doing this interview with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, according to a report by CSAC, global royalty collections for music hit record $9.4 billion in 2018. What does that mean for the music industry?
Yes, so what it means is that the industry is growing. This is a very positive trend. We see a continuous trend of development in the market. I think that a big part of it is the success of the digital market. And of course, in Korea here, you had a great success in this area, in the transformation into the digital world. So generally speaking, the creative industries are expanding. The authors, the creators of music, TV, film, and other works of art are receiving more royalties.
So the growth in the digital sector and in streaming revenues has helped creators worldwide. But at the same time, the issue of copyright infringement has become a bigger problem. How do we cope with that?
One of the main challenges is how to protect works in digital form, and how do you monetize them? How do you make sure that the creators, the musicians, the lyricists, all of the other talented people who create works, that they get paid and they can continue to make a living from their works. And the main issue that the industry is working on is to make sure that everyone gets a license, everyone pays fairly, whether the content was uploaded by the users themselves, such as in the case of YouTube or other user-generated platforms.
K-pop has grown into a worldwide genre itself. What do you make of it?
In fact, I see two issues that are strongly linked there. The first one is the expansion of the creative industries here, the growing popularity of K-pop, but it's not just K-pop. A week ago, Korea won the first Oscar for the best film, the first time that a foreign film wins this award. Bong Joon-ho brought you a lot of success in the Oscars. I think that all of these things are not a coincidence, because we know the government had very strong policies to encourage investment and to protect the development of this sector. You see this sector growing, you see the digital market developing, everyone benefits, the digital services, the creators themselves, the collective management organizations are doing a good job, and all of that, I think, is behind the success story of K-pop and the growing popularity of this genre outside Korea itself.
All right, Mr. Oren, I think that about wraps it up. Once again, thanks for doing this interview with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, if you're a fan of the K-pop superstars BTS, you'll be able to get their new album in just a couple of hours. According to Big Hit Entertainment, the new album, Map of the Soul 7, will be released globally at 6 p.m. Korea time. The album has 15 new songs, including the main track, On, which was previewed earlier today for 30 seconds on the social video platform TikTok. A digital version of On, featuring Australian pop star Sia, will be released as well. With their fourth full-length album, BTS have topped their own pre-sales record, selling more than 4 million copies of Map of the Soul 7 already. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.